It is said that certain moments linger in the shadows of our minds for eternity, not solely due to the events that transpired, but rather because of the person you transformed into in their wake. It began for me on a drizzly Saturday afternoon, a day that carries a weight, as if the clouds themselves are foreboding, even before misfortune has a chance to unfold. The sky hung in a muted, lifeless gray, as if caught in a struggle between the urge to weep and the desire to hold its emotions in check. As I lingered by the kitchen window, the rain cascaded down the glass, and in that moment, an overwhelming sense of solitude enveloped me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in what felt like an eternity. That morning, James, my husband, departed once more for a business trip. There was no farewell kiss. There was no warm smile to be found, only a hurried farewell and the soft click of the front door closing behind him. As I observed him pull away, a question lingered in my mind. When did we drift so far apart? When did my existence begin to fade into the background of his life? The children had ventured off for the weekend, finding solace in the company of their grandmother. What about the silence that envelopes the house? The atmosphere was anything but tranquil. The noise was deafening, the sort of silence that seeps into your very being, causing a deep ache in your heart. I drifted from one room to another, straightening items that required no straightening, merely to reassure myself of my presence in this space. Remains valuable. Remains in sight. In that moment, my phone vibrated with a sudden buzz, a collective note from Thomas, a dear companion of James. However, the conversation also featured Malik and Evan. Each one of them, they claimed to be in close proximity. They wished to stop by and spend some time together. Perhaps I ought to have declined. Perhaps I ought to have reconsidered my choices. However, I chose not to. I hesitated briefly, my fingers poised above the screen. Before I responded, "Sure, come on over." In that fleeting moment, I found myself opening a door I hadn't known would remain forever ajar. I attempted to feign indifference, as if it were nothing of consequence. Merely companions paying a visit, individuals I had been acquainted with for many years. Yet, as they crossed the threshold, an undeniable change took place. A sensation coursed through me. The atmosphere embraced a gentle warmth, more substantial. Their laughter echoed in the void that James once occupied, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, someone truly gazed upon me. Not behind me, not by my hand, upon me. Thomas offered me a gentle smile, as if he had uncovered a part of me I had long since overlooked. Malik delivered his usual jokes, yet this time, an unmistakable edge lingered in his voice. And what of Evan? He embraced me with a sincerity that spoke volumes. He recalled the sensation of embracing a woman tightly. I dismissed it with a wave of my hand. I reassured myself that I was being foolish. It was merely the product of my imagination, spiraling into the realm of the fantastical. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that something had already begun. Perilous situation. I found myself exposed. Longing for warmth and connection consumed me. In that moment, I found myself in a hushed dwelling, surrounded by three men who in an instant illuminated my existence. What transpired thereafter? I have kept this secret to myself, never sharing it with another soul. Not even I. Not quite. For to voice it would be to embrace the person I transformed into on that fateful day. Yet, should you choose to remain by my side, should your desire to understand be genuine, I will share it all with you. Proceed with caution, for this tale does not unfold with the familiar dichotomy of heroes and villains. It's more complicated than that. It exists in truth. It transformed the entire landscape. Before we proceed, pause for a moment, take a deep breath and press that subscribe button to let the heartfelt stories begin to unfold. As for the continuation of this tale, you simply won't believe what unfolds next. I entered into matrimony at a tender age, perhaps a tad too youthful. In those days, life seemed uncomplicated, as if love itself could serve as the sole foundation for a future. In the dawn of existence there was. James captivated me completely. He embodied a certain confidence, a relentless drive, effortlessly becoming the center of attention in every room he entered. With just one remark, he had the power to elicit laughter from an entire table. He harbored dreams, grand and ambitious, and I held unwavering faith in each and every one of them. He filled me with pride. I longed to be his sanctuary, his refuge. For a time I believe I truly was. Yet time possesses an uncanny ability to erode even the sturdiest of things. Amid the late nights spent at the office, the promotions that came and went, the relentless deadlines, and the fleeting dinners that never seemed long enough, James began to see me differently than he once did. He began to arrive home later, his smile fading, his touch feeling obligatory rather than desired. We remained in the same bed, yet the distance that lay between us felt chillier than the fabric that covered us. I made an effort. I truly made an effort. I began preparing his beloved dishes once more. Candles flickered to life. Once I indulged in the purchase of new lingerie. He hardly lifted his gaze from the screen, murmuring that he was weary. I smiled and nodded, feigning comprehension. Yet within, a fracture deepened ever so slightly. We are blessed with 2 children, vibrant, boisterous, teeming with energy children. When they return, the house transforms into a genuine sanctuary. Fingers smudged against the fridge door, crayon masterpieces adorning the walls, tiny footsteps pattering down the hallway. Their laughter was once the thread that wove my existence into something whole. Yet, despite their happiness, the truth remained that James was perpetually lost in another realm. He was present in body without a doubt, yet, on an emotional level, it had been months since he and I had shared the same space. I filled the silence in the only manner I understood. I immersed myself in creating an atmosphere in our home that radiated warmth and invitation. If I was unable to mend our marriage, perhaps I could tend to the environment surrounding it. The living room transformed into my personal endeavor. Delicate beige drapes frame the windows, while throw pillows adorned with golden accents invite comfort. Eucalyptus candles flicker softly in the corners, casting a warm glow. A cozy blanket draped over the arm of the sofa. Family photographs elegantly arranged along the staircase, each frame drawing the eye inward. Myself, James, and the children. Chilled expressions. Silence conceals. During that period, his friends began to visit more frequently. Thomas stood as the pioneer. He would occasionally swing by on weekends, claiming he was merely passing through. Yet he always arrived with a little something in hand. Delicate pastries, a fine bottle of wine, and on one occasion, a charming little bouquet of flowers for the gracious hostess. He would take his place at the kitchen island, engaging me in conversation as I folded laundry or prepared dinner. He wasn't playful in a flirtatious way, not precisely. Yet, his presence held a certain warmth that was undeniably soothing. He paid attention. He inquired about the events of my day. He chuckled at my tales as if they were genuinely amusing. Malik arrived as well, brimming with exuberance and a vibrant presence. He would present the children with small tokens of affection. Comic books, sweets, and at one point even a miniature drone. The children held him in the highest regard. And I found solace in the diversion. He was audacious, perpetually playful, referring to me as the queen of the castle and Wonder Mom. Initially it seemed innocuous, merely jesting. Yet at times a fire flickered in his gaze, a lingering glance that stretched just a moment too long in James's absence. And then came Evan. Evan stood apart from the rest. He spoke less frequently. There was no necessity for him to do so. His presence exuded a serene, assured aura that drew you in, compelling you to experience it more intimately. He observed the subtle transformations when I altered my hairstyle, when I adorned my lips with a fresh hue. He brought me into the light, reminding me that I was still a person deserving of attention, deserving of connection. Initially it was understated, simply informal visits. A gentle rap echoed through the stillness of the room. James has returned home. Oh, is that so? May I enter regardless? I never uttered the word no. In all honesty, I found myself enveloped in solitude. Not merely solitary. Isolated, a solitude that envelopes you, tightening its grip around your heart when the world remains oblivious. I longed for the warmth of a gentle touch, the sound of a kind voice, the feeling of being truly noticed. I longed for the sensation of significance. With James, life had transformed into a series of items to be ticked off. Essentials, expenses, academic gatherings. Yet, in the company of his friends, a chuckle escaped me once more. A sense of buoyancy enveloped me. Somewhere in between completeness and obscurity, I was acutely aware of the peril that lay ahead. I envisioned the possibilities it could embody. Yet, when one has been deprived of affection, even the smallest gestures can seem like a grand banquet. In that serene, tastefully adorned home, where the scent of eucalyptus candles mingled with the echoes of cherished memories, I sought to hold on to. 3 men entered, unwittingly crossing into a realm that James had left invitingly ajar. At that moment it barely registered in my mind. I reassured myself that it was simply a part of the ordinary flow of life. Pure. Yet, in retrospect, I sensed that a part of me was aware all along. A shift was imminent, and none among us would depart unscathed. It began in a straightforward manner. James was preparing for yet another journey, a weekend business retreat organized by his company. All is as expected. He was perpetually on the move, perpetually nestled in a hotel, within the confines of a conference room, pursuing the elusive next deal. At that point I had ceased my inquiries. I ceased to feign any semblance of distress. On the eve of his departure, amidst the flurry of packing, he nonchalantly remarked that his friends might drop by during his absence. He mentioned, hardly glancing away from his suitcase, that they would likely spend some time together, perhaps watching the game or engaging in some other activity. Simply be kind. Ensure their comfort is prioritized. I chuckled softly, primarily driven by incredulity. Am I now the host for your friends in your absence? He pressed a fleeting kiss to my cheek, a gesture more rooted in formality than genuine warmth, and remarked, "You've always been a wonderful hostess." And thus it came to an end. That was the defining moment, so diminutive, merely commonplace. Yet it is precisely those that catch you off guard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the rain began its descent, arriving earlier than expected the following afternoon. Softly unfolding, gradually intensifying, the sound tapped rhythmically on the windows, a subtle harbinger of what was to come. Candles flickered in the living room, casting a warm glow that enveloped the house in a comforting embrace. I thought that if I was going to spend the weekend alone with 3 men, I should create an atmosphere that felt inviting. I donned a modest dress devoid of extravagance and overly revealing elements, yet it embraced my form just enough to evoke the essence of my femininity, reminding me that I was more than merely a wife and mother. At approximately 5:30, the doorbell chimed. First came Thomas, followed by Malik, and then Evan, each bearing their own burden. Thomas arrived with a bottle of red wine in hand. Malik indulged in some snacks. Evan presented a bouquet of flowers, not intended for James, for my own sake. With a charming smile, he presented me with a delicate bouquet of white lilies, a thoughtful gesture for our gracious hostess. My breath hitched, yet I managed a smile, feigning nonchalance, masking the flutter of my heart just beneath the surface. We took our places in the living room. The fire crackled softly, the wine exhaled its rich bouquet, and the laughter? It danced in the air. It cascaded effortlessly. With remarkable ease, we reminisced about our college days, shared tales of the kids, discussed work, exchanged thoughts on movies, and covered a myriad of topics. Malik's playful jabs about my sophisticated wine preference linger in my memory as I unveiled the glasses. Without a word of request, Thomas took it upon himself to assist me in setting the table. Evan's gaze lingered on me throughout the entire experience. Silently, with great attention, I prepared a delightful dinner of roasted chicken, accompanied by creamy garlic mashed potatoes and crisp green beans adorned with almonds. I had crafted it countless times in the past, yet that evening it carried an unmistakable weight of difference. I arranged it meticulously, embellishing it with delicate garnishes as if I were preparing a meal for someone I wished to captivate. They observed. They showered praise upon the food, my kitchen, and the atmosphere. I found myself blushing more often than I care to confess. And then the wine arrived. 1 glass transformed into 2. What began as 2 has now transformed into 3. The laughter grew more vibrant, the eye contact held a deeper significance, and the casual touches, such as Thomas's hand brushing against my arm as he moved past, started to pulse with an electric intensity. With a playful glint in his eye, Malik quipped about James's fortunate circumstances. Evan remained silent, his expression unchanging. He merely gazed at me. That look is forever etched in my memory. It lacked any overt suggestion. It wasn't truly inappropriate, not in the strictest sense. Yet it was undeniably intense. Stillness. A gaze that conveyed a depth of unexpressed emotions. A question lingers in the air between us. My heart fluttered unexpectedly, not out of fear. For the first time in ages, I experienced a sensation that had long eluded me. Noted. seeking, vibrant, and I feigned ignorance. I averted my gaze, chuckled at yet another of Malik's tales, and filled my glass with more wine. Yet, the harm had already been inflicted. That evening, once they departed and the house embraced its stillness once more, I found myself in the kitchen, gazing at the half-empty bottle resting on the counter. The faint aroma of Evan's cologne hung delicately in the air. Thomas's gentle voice lingered in my ears. The resonance of Malik's laughter continues to ripple through the floor. Yet, it was the intensity of Evan's gaze that lingered in my mind the longest. It trailed behind me as I ascended the stairs, into the sanctuary of my bedroom, delving into the depths of my mind. As I reclined in solitude, my gaze fixed upon the ceiling, I pondered the source of my restless spirit. Such warmth envelopes the air. Utterly unsettled, I reassured myself that it was merely wine, only solitude, merely a flight of fancy. Yet, beneath the surface I was aware of the truth. That night a change had taken place. Something genuine, perilous situation, and I could sense it. Our journey was merely at its inception. Was it inappropriate to relish the spotlight? The question lingered in my mind the following day, repeating endlessly like a broken record I was unable to silence. Is it misguided to yearn for a sense of being desired? To yearn for the way their gaze lingered? To bask in the warmth of their laughter, as if I were the most enchanting presence in the room? I repeatedly reassured myself that I was being absurd. Intense. I found myself enveloped in loneliness, allowing my imagination to run wild. Yet the reality was more straightforward and more chaotic. A gnawing hunger consumed me, not intended for consumption. This is not intended for gifting purposes. Yet, for the sake of connection, for something that lifted me beyond the confines of a monotonous existence. Indeed, I am a mother. Indeed, I hold the title of a wife. Yet, prior to everything else, I existed as myself. Somewhere along this winding path, I found myself adrift, consumed by the demands of others, neglecting my own desires. That morning, I lingered before the bathroom mirror, caught in a moment that stretched longer than usual. I traced the delicate lines that had begun to etch themselves beneath my eyes, lines that James never appeared to acknowledge. With deliberate precision, I applied the mascara, taking my time with each stroke. I applied a touch of blush. I donned the fragrance that had remained untouched for months. A yearning stirred within me, a desire to experience something profound, everything. In that moment, a vivid memory washed over me. To the outset, in the early days of James and myself, how he would tenderly kiss the back of my hand for no reason at all. He would pause mid-sentence, his gaze locking onto mine to tell me I was beautiful. How we were unable to resist the pull of each other in those days. Reasons were unnecessary for us. Timing was unnecessary for us. We simply required one another. Yet, amidst the hustle of work meetings and the rhythm of school pickups, amidst the weight of unpaid bills and the silence of unvoiced resentments, we lost the art of connection. Even in the comfort of his own home, he seldom lifted his gaze from the screen of his phone. The warmth in his eyes had settled into a familiar pattern. The thrill had morphed into a sense of duty. Upon entering the room, James would always brighten up. In that moment, he scarcely fluttered his eyelids. As Evan's gaze met mine, it mirrored the way James once looked at me. When Thomas addressed me as if I held significance. When Malik brought forth laughter from me that I hadn't experienced in months. What reason could I possibly have to remain silent? Regret lingers in my mind. I should have declined the invitation for dinner on that second night. Yet I refrained. Later that afternoon they reached out once more, inquiring whether I would be at home, if they could swing by to enjoy a film and pick up some takeout. I lingered at my phone. I recall simply standing there, gazing at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My thumb lingered above the keyboard, poised for action. My heart raced with a heightened rhythm. I was clear about my actions. Not quite. A sense of bewilderment enveloped me as I pondered the reasons behind my desire for it. It was never about betrayal. It was never about revenge. The focus was never on them. The focus was on me. Concerning the frigid void within my chest that seemed to amplify its presence with each passing day. The void of silence that enveloped me when James withdrew his hand from mine. Concerning the sorrow that seeped in each night I lay in solitude, even with him there beside me. I composed a pair of words. Of course, please join me. They made their entrance just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Malik exuded his characteristic swagger, Thomas wore his serene smile, and then there was Evan. Evan exuded a similar quiet intensity. They arrived with Thai food, my absolute favorite, they recalled. We nestled into the embrace of the sectional, a film flickering in the background, its narrative largely ignored by our wandering thoughts. The room lay shrouded in dimness, the flickering glow from the screen casting shadows across our faces. I found myself seated in the center with Malik to my left, Thomas to my right, and Evan nearby. He stepped onto the floor directly before me, reclining against the edge of the couch. Near, so near that I could sense the heat radiating from his back, brushing against my legs. I found myself laughing excessively. My smile stretched on, lingering in the air. My body inclined effortlessly, and I loathed myself for the simplicity of it all. I repeatedly reassured myself that nothing was unfolding, that all was pure and untainted. I was simply relishing the presence of those around me, absorbing the attention as one would bask in the warmth of sunlight following a prolonged winter's chill. Yet, beneath the surface I was aware. I sensed the gradual descent. Each laugh, each glance, each fleeting look drew me nearer to a boundary I had vowed never to breach. Yet even so, I allowed it to continue. For the simple reason that the truth? I had no desire to. That second dinner unveiled a threshold I was unprepared to shut. As it unveiled, the world around it started to transform. It began in ways that appeared insignificant. Small details. Evan lingered into the night, long after Thomas and Malik had departed. He claimed he had forgotten his phone. Yet he had not forgotten a single thing. He hesitated, allowing the moment to stretch out in silence. He lingered at the threshold, one hand poised on the doorknob while the other lay comfortably in his pocket. He offered a gentle smile, the same serene, contemplative expression that was his constant companion. I informed him that I would retrieve his phone. It rested prominently on the coffee table, awaiting attention. Yet he remained still. "I'm not in a rush," he remarked. A silence lingered, heavy with unarticulated thoughts. He retraced his steps to the living room, surveyed his surroundings, and once more settled on the edge of the couch. I too took a seat, not alongside him. Initially, not at all, yet near enough for me to sense the warmth radiating from his body in the gap that separated us. Near enough that the silence held a comfortable ease. It was electric. We engaged in conversation. It's not concerning anything profound, simply existence, beloved culinary delights, recollections of youth. Yet, hidden within each word, a palpable tension lingered, an irresistible tug that I endeavored to dismiss, yet found impossible to resist. As he finally rose to depart, truly departing this time, he did not merely stroll out. He paused at the threshold, transformed, gazed upon me. His voice fell to a hushed murmur. "Indeed you are aware. I have often pondered the experience of stepping into James's shoes for a single day." He smiled once more, whispered a soft good night, and stepped into the rain-soaked world beyond. I lingered in the hallway, my hand resting on the door, my heart pounding as if I had just stumbled upon a forbidden secret. On the following day, Thomas paid a visit. He mentioned he was nearby and decided to take a look at the leaky kitchen faucet that James had brought up weeks earlier. I welcomed him inside, thankful for the companionship. We crouched low side by side beneath the sink. The room was confined. Our arms collided once, twice, and then his hand grazed mine, warm, firm, weathered. He offered no words of remorse. I remained steadfast, not retreating. We lingered beneath that sink far longer than necessary. Repair what was never in need of fixing. We conversed about a myriad of topics, yet the thoughts that lingered in our minds remained unspoken. As he rose to his feet, he cast a glance my way and remarked, "James is fortunate. You're aware of that, aren't you?" I offered him a constrained smile. Yet a deep ache stirred within me. That evening, as if destiny itself was challenging me to take a step deeper, Malik sent a text. He stood outside, a bottle of wine in hand, declaring that he possessed a tale too amusing to keep to himself. He entered with a hearty laugh, brimming with vitality, just as he always did. He playfully mocked my playlist. He playfully remarked on my penchant for soft sweaters that resemble a slice of paradise. He poured wine for us both, sank onto the couch, and before I realized it, we were shoulder to shoulder, laughing as we once did in college, before life tangled our paths. Suddenly, his tone transformed. "You know, I once believed that James wasn't worthy of you," he said, his gaze fixed intently on mine. "At this moment, I am certain of it. I ought to have intervened, urged him to return home. Yet I remained still, allowing that moment to drift between us like smoke, dense and elusive, slipping through my fingers. Subsequently, everything transformed. They started to visit with increasing frequency. Not always in unison. At times, solitude envelopes me. Times there exists a rationale. At times devoid of. A shattered seat, a book on loan. A longing for the warmth of freshly baked cookies from the oven. Every pretext, I welcomed them inside. Each and every time. The gazes lingered more profoundly. The praises resonate profoundly. The silences are more charged. Thomas would present small tokens. Fresh flowers and candles that he claimed exuded the essence of comfort. Malik began to call me darling, his hand resting gently on the small of my back as he walked by. Evan had fallen into a silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Yet, when his gaze met mine, an overwhelming sensation washed over me, as if I were laid bare before him, utterly vulnerable, yet paradoxically secure in that moment. Every man satisfied a unique craving within me. Thomas instilled in me a sense of respect, as if I remained deserving of compassion. Malik brought laughter to my soul, rekindling a sense of vitality within me. And Evan, he evoked a sense of passion, of fire, of a connection that transcended the need for words. I sensed it was descending into chaos. I realized I was gliding perilously near to a point of no return. Yet I pressed on, for in their gaze I was far from unseen. I found myself once more. Late one night, after the children had settled into their dreams and following a brief message from James stating he wouldn't return until Monday, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it, anticipating merely one of them. Yet all three remained in place, beaming, drenched by the downpour. No explanations are provided. Free from any sense of discomfort. This was clearly orchestrated, as if they possessed an innate understanding of their actions. And I simply remained in place, enveloped in stillness, my breath hitched in my throat. In that instant when silence enveloped us, I understood that this was no longer about James. This narrative centered around my experiences, what transpired thereafter. I find myself questioning whether I will ever truly convey the depths of my thoughts. Yet I can assure you, following that night, everything changed irrevocably. I ought to have declined. I ought to have shut the door, offered a courteous smile, mentioned the late hour, claimed I was unwell, anything to halt the scene that was already playing out before my eyes. Yet I refrained. Instead, I chose to step aside, and I welcomed them inside. The trio strode in with an air of belonging, moving confidently, their eyes fixed ahead, devoid of any awkward exchanges. It felt as though they had conspired in whispers, an unspoken understanding of the possibilities this night held. The atmosphere was thick, not with warmth, but with a palpable sense of expectation. The sort that constricts your throat, rendering each breath a struggle, despite the absence of any physical contact. I attempted to downplay the situation, inviting them to make themselves at home as I went to fetch another bottle of wine. My hands quivered as I filled the glasses, acutely aware of their gaze upon me, each of the three scrutinizing every motion, deciphering every change in my breath, every glimmer in my eyes. We found ourselves in the living room, the familiar space we knew so well. Yet that night it seemed smaller, dimmer, and imbued with a sense of intimacy. The shadows lingered in the corners of the room, as if reluctant to miss a single moment. It began with a sense of ease. We engaged in conversation, shared jokes, and reveled in laughter over the familiar topics. Malik set the music in motion, a gentle, subdued jazz that enveloped the room, stirring emotions within, elusive yet palpable, leaving one to ponder the depths of feeling it evoked. With a sly smirk, Malik leaned in and proposed, "How about we play a game?" I arched an eyebrow. What are we, if not teenagers? Indeed, a grin spread across his face. Young souls reveled in joy. Thus we proceeded. We engaged in a game, something whimsical at the outset, truth or dare. Initially, it seemed innocuous, cheerful and carefree. With a playful challenge, Malik urged Thomas to belt out a nostalgic love ballad from the vibrant 90s era. We erupted in laughter when he truly went through with it. Then Evan challenged Malik to reveal something deeply personal. And Malik, ever the jester, fell silent, fixed his gaze upon me, and confessed, "I believe I've desired something I ought not to for quite some time." A weight pressed upon my chest. Silence enveloped the room. I savored a sip of wine, a smile gracing my lips as if I were oblivious. Yet the truth was we all heard it. At last the moment arrived for me. Malik inclined his body forward. "Will you choose the path of honesty or embrace the thrill of challenge?" For a moment I paused. My heart pounded with such intensity that I was convinced it echoed in their ears. "Truth," I murmured. He smiled, yet this time the humor was absent. Only warmth, intrigue, and a shadowy presence linger. "What is a secret you've kept from James?" The question landed with the force of a sharp blow. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. I might have brushed it aside with a chuckle. I might have chosen a more cautious response. Yet, as I gazed into the glass cradled in my hands, I confess that there are moments when I feel invisible in his presence. Silence enveloped the room. Thomas extended his hand and softly brushed against my knee. Only for a fleeting moment, merely a whisper of acknowledgement, a subtle nod to your presence. Then Evan leaned in closer. His voice resonated with a low, deep timbre, barely rising above a whisper. "Would you choose to alter a single night in your life, and if so, would that night be tonight?" Words eluded me. Breath eluded me. He drew nearer, so near that I could sense the warmth of his breath brushing against my cheek. He refrained from physical contact, yet the mere essence of his presence ignited a fervent heat upon my skin. Thomas remained seated, observing me in silence, his gaze unwavering and intense, as if he were already privy to my thoughts, as though he had been aware for weeks. And then the inquiry ceased. The final whistle blew, signaling the end of the game. Yet the tension remained palpable. The dares had come to an end. Enough with the humor. Only the four of us, gathered in a room brimming with an electric energy. I could almost hear the crackle of it in the atmosphere. Transcended the mere physical realm. It was a whirlwind of emotions, intricately woven, electrifying, and deeply unsettling. I found myself drawn in myriad directions, captivated by each glance, each silent beckoning, every fragment of my being yearning to experience all that I had long been deprived of feeling. The duration of our silence escapes me, yet the sensation of that moment lingers vividly in my mind. My breath came in shallow gasps, my skin radiated warmth, and my heart raced as if it were desperate to break free from my chest. And then an event unfolded. Not a single thing, not a single moment, yet a gradual dissolution of limits, gentle caresses, prolonged glances, unspoken words that found their way into the air, despite their intended silence. And when it had all come to an end, sleep eluded me that night. I found myself in the company of others. Not quite. Even as the room fell silent, the lights faded to darkness, and I found myself alone in that bed. I found myself in the company of others. Every glance, every utterance, every emotion they bestowed upon me became a part of my being, a weight I bore with me always. I continued to do so. As dawn broke, the world appeared unchanged. Yet everything seemed different. The sunlight streamed through the blinds as it always had, illuminating the particles of dust dancing in the air. The silence enveloped the house, a stillness that felt almost oppressive. The unsettling silence that descends once an irrevocable change has taken place, as if the very walls were aware of the events that had transpired the previous night. A relentless throb echoed in my skull. My body felt peculiar, as if it had slipped from my grasp, no longer entirely my own. I glided through the house, a specter of sorts, feeling numb and detached, yearning for something, anything, to shatter the silence that enveloped me. Yet nothing transpired. At that moment my phone chimed to life. It was indeed James. A chill coursed through me as I beheld his name illuminated on the screen. My fingers wrapped firmly around the phone. For a fleeting moment I found myself gazing at it, as if perhaps with enough concentration, it might simply vanish from sight. I chose not to respond. I was unable to, for I was aware that my voice would tremble. I was certain he would catch a hint within it. It's a mystery I find difficult to articulate. He opted to send a text instead, merely reaching out to see how things are going. "I trust this message finds you well." I responded in writing. "Everything is well. Simply weary. The children are doing well. I cherish you deeply." Falsehood, falsehood, falsehood. I despised the simplicity of it all. Later that morning, I discovered Thomas in the kitchen. He sat quietly, cradling his coffee, his gaze anchored to the ground. "Good morning," I said. He scarcely lifted his gaze. Simply nodded, uttering a few words about the necessity of departing. Malik stepped forward, his shirt half-buttoned, a playful smirk dancing on his lips, though it failed to illuminate his eyes. "Are you really going to pretend as if nothing occurred?" I inquired softly. He shrugged, his typical bravado now seeming delicate. "What is it that you wish for me to express?" Before I had the chance to reply, he vanished. The coffee remained untouched on the counter. Left me there, a swirl of unarticulated questions lingering in the air. And then came Evan. He departed last. He approached the door as if it were merely another morning, as though all was as it should be. As he approached, he leaned in with deliberate grace, placing a gentle kiss upon my cheek. Words escaped him. Instead, he simply gazed at me one final time before stepping out into the embrace of the morning light. The ensuing silence was overwhelming. In that kitchen, I lingered for what seemed like an eternity, attuned to the relentless ticking of the clock, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the persistent ache of my own thoughts. The dwelling, once alive with the sounds of joy and mirth, now resembled a crypt. I tidied up, meticulously cleaned every corner of the living room. The sheets have been changed. I meticulously washed the wine glasses not once but twice. Not due to their filth, but rather in an attempt to erase the haunting recollections of that night from their surfaces. Remove yourself from my presence. Yet, memories remain stained, refusing to wash away. They leave a mark. After a span of 2 days, James returned home. I observed his vehicle glide into the driveway. He lingered in the driver's seat, a moment stretched out as if he were gathering his resolve. He entered the room wearing that familiar weary smile. He placed his suitcase on the ground. He pressed his lips to the crown of my head, just as he always had. Yet, as his gaze met mine, he hesitated, only for a fleeting moment. In that fleeting moment, clarity washed over me. He observed a detail. Perhaps it was the manner in which my gaze avoided his. Perhaps it was the way I recoiled at the brush of his fingers against my arm. Perhaps it was merely an instinctual sensation. He remained silent. Yet, he was not compelled to do so. It was there unmistakably in the depths of his gaze, a glimmer of an elusive essence. Not quite suspicion to be precise. Yet, the expanse between us, the same distance I had sensed for months lingered. Yet this time it emanated from within me, not from him. The source was within me. I navigated his presence as if we were unfamiliar to one another, courteous, grinning at the perfect instances, inquiring with purpose, yet within a tempest of screams raged. Not out of guilt. Emerging from uncertainty, amidst the tempest of feelings that had settled within me. A longing that stirs the soul. Remorse, trepidation. A peculiar and dreadful excitement I dared not confess to anyone. I cannot even recognize myself. With each brush of James's hand against my skin, a wave of guilt washed over me, as if I were betraying the haunting recollection of a night that lingered in my mind, one I both regretted and couldn't escape. Uncertainty enveloped my sense of self, or what I desired. Yet there was one certainty I held close. The harm had already been inflicted. That night has replayed in my mind 1,000 times. Each nuance, each burst of laughter, each gaze that held a moment too long, each word resonated with a weight beyond its intended meaning. Yet even so, I find myself without an answer. Was I pursuing retribution against a man who had cast me aside? A man who once made me feel as though I were the very heart of his universe, only to subsequently relegate me to the shadows of his own narrative? Or was I merely seeking to rediscover the essence of vitality? I'm uncertain. I truly do not. What I did felt instinctive, not premeditated. There was no elaborate scheme to harm James or to make a statement. It resonated. Impulsive, chaotic, humankind. As if my heart had endured a prolonged famine. It had grown indifferent to the source of its nourishment. I turned my back on him. Yet, what is even more challenging to acknowledge is that I have betrayed my own self. I ventured into territory I had vowed to avoid. I transformed into a stranger to myself, a person I find difficult to take pride in. And yet, There exists another truth that I cannot overlook. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally felt acknowledged. Not merely observed. Noted, moved yet unclaimed. Yearned for yet not overlooked. Heard and acknowledged, not dismissed. To feel alive in another's grasp is a perilous affair. Particularly when those hands are not your husband's. I'm uncertain whether James harbors any suspicions. If he does, he has remained silent. Perhaps he has decided against inquiring. Perhaps he fears what the answer might reveal. As for those individuals, Thomas, Malik, and Evan, I'm uncertain whether they've discussed that evening with one another. If they have informed James, should they ever choose to. Our conversations have become infrequent. Intermittent messages. Several uncomfortable exchanges occur when James extends his invitation to them. We feign that all is as it should be. However, it is not. Every word carries an undercurrent of tension. A glimmer of unspoken words dances in each fleeting gaze. And one of them still gazes at me as if he's anticipating something, anticipating my words. To embark on an endeavor, to once more unlock that threshold, I shall refrain from disclosing which one. To be honest, I find myself questioning whether I could truly trust my own judgment in his presence, should the opportunity arise. And that fills me with apprehension, for it signifies that the night has not yet reached its conclusion. Not within my thoughts. Not within the depths of my heart. It remains, akin to the scent of a fragrance embedded in a sweater that has endured 3 washes. Like a haunting memory that lingers, refusing to fade away even when you wish it would. I strive to embody the woman I once was, the identical spouse, the identical mother, the identical version of myself that James anticipates upon entering the room. Yet I am aware of the truth. I am no longer that person. Whatever fragment of my being ventured beyond that boundary that night, she returned irrevocably altered. Perhaps she will remain forever elusive. Have you ever experienced such profound loneliness that even the most misguided attention seemed like the only solace available to you? So desperate for warmth that when anyone extended it, you didn't pause to consider their motives. You simply swung the door wide open? That is precisely where I found myself. Feeling a sense of disappointment, uncertain, simply weary of always being an afterthought. James hardly paid attention to it, except when the children required lunch or the laundry lay unfolded. Weary of sharing a bed with someone who seemed a world apart, exhausted from the charade that chipped away at me a little more with each passing day. Thus, when his friends offered me what he had ceased to provide, attention, warmth, presence, I allowed myself to embrace it. Am I a monster because of this? Or merely human? I am aware that my actions were misguided. I realize I have traversed a boundary that cannot be undone. Yet, I am acutely aware that every error carries with it an underlying cause. A fissure that expanded beyond measure, a silence that stretched on interminably. Have you ever experienced such profound emptiness that even a mere glance seemed to offer a lifeline? Have you ever acted not out of malice but simply from sheer fatigue? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you perceive it as an act of betrayal? Or could it have been merely a woman seeking to reclaim her sense of vitality? Could it have been a sign of weakness? Or merely a fleeting instant of recognition? For it is often the most profound tales, those we hesitate to voice, that hold the greatest significance. If you feel that stories of this nature deserve to be shared, the unfiltered, the authentic, the ones that linger in your heart, then show your support for this video by sharing it. Join us on the journey with Love, Lies, and Truths. In this space, we weave narratives that resonate deeply. We explore the depths of the human heart. At times, the most perilous doors are not those we secure tightly, trembling in trepidation. They are the doors we leave ajar, yearning for a stranger to step inside and mend what we lack the courage to confront ourselves. Loneliness often whispers softly. At times, it murmurs softly. It taps softly. And when it discovers you weary enough, it steps right in. I welcome them inside. Each one of them. At first, I believed I could master it, maintain its boundaries, isolate. Yet, emotions do not operate in such a manner. Desire knows no boundaries. And once that door swung open, a part of me remained ajar, never truly shutting it again. At this moment, now I dwell among the echoes, the recollection. The expression in James's eyes reveals a knowing unease, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken truth that lingers just beyond his grasp. The burden of unspoken truths lingers in the space between myself and those who once ignited my spirit. I assure myself that I will never return. It was merely a single error, on a single night, yet certain nights resonate endlessly. Yet here I remain, poised in that hallway, searching for the path that leads me back to the woman I once was, before I allowed them to enter my life. I welcomed them inside, yet I continue to search for the path that leads me back to freedom.